Over the past few months, the developers of Space Engineers have been teasing an Economy 2 overhaul, promising—
Stop! Who cares? They're adding NPCs to Space Engineers.
You mean Space Engineers 2? Yeah, we already know.
No! Space Engineers 1.
What?
Just come over here, I'll show you. Look, watch this. So, what do you think?
Holy shit. So yeah, very unexpectedly, it appears that adding NPCs to Space Engineers 1. I very much did not expect this. I knew Space Engineers 2 is getting NPCs, so I assumed that was just it for Space Engineers 1. That Space Engineers 1 would just get enhancements of the base systems, and a lot of the new systems would be Space Engineers 2 exclusive. But here they are. Now, this teaser did come out on April Fool's Day, but the day after, they did confirm that this was a real feature coming in the next update, and that these animated characters, as they refer to them as, will populate neutral trading stations in the upcoming 209 update. As shown in this teaser, it appears these NPCs are quite basic and they just walk around the station and then wave at you and interact with things like seats and stuff. But I would imagine that this is just the beginning. When they added AI blocks to Space Engineers, initially they were just for the players to use. But over the next few updates, they use these AI blocks as a framework to overhaul all the different aspects of the game. And as this update is overhauling economy, that will be the last of the base things in Space Engineers 1 overhauled. So I would suggest that the addition of NPCs in this update would be the next thing they're going to overhaul for everything. Potentially the update after this one could be that fabled Warfare 3 I always like to talk about. And perhaps we could get armed NPCs in encounters as well. This update could be the beginning of a massive fundamental change to Space Engineers 1, and I am very excited for it. Funnily enough, this news means I will have to change part of my 75k subscriber video that I've been working on. Good news, we haven't hit that milestone yet, although we are very close. If only there were some people very interested in Space Engineers updates that could potentially change that. Pointy fingers. These animated characters aren't the only thing coming in this update though. As I've said earlier, this is an update to overhaul the economy system of Space Engineers 1, which was quite basic when it was added all those years ago, but the philosophy for Space Engineers updates has changed a lot since then, and they've got a lot bigger and a lot more expansive, and it appears from everything that we've been shown that a massive overhaul for the economy is coming. So, let's have a look what they're adding. As I said earlier, previous updates of Space Engineers 1 focused on overhauling NPCs and PvE content, and this took the form of new encounters called global encounters, which were endgame encounters with a unique loot called Process-Tech in them, and additionally this included overhauls for cargo ships, random encounters, and unknown signals to take advantage of all the new NPC blocks added to Space Engineers, and additionally for them to use a lot of the new cosmetic blocks that have been added in the many updates since release. This update does the same to the economy system, with the first teaser we saw for this update showcasing some of the updated economy ships that you can purchase at the trade stations. Now, I don't think we see anything particularly new in this teaser. I believe every single block in this teaser is a block that we're already aware of. But as I'm sure you can clearly see, all of these ships in this teaser look much better than the previous ships you were able to purchase from the economy stations. On their post about this, they mentioned that the old ships that you were able to purchase were both visually and functionally outdated. So this could refer to weapons. That's when those purchasable ships were added. We didn't have the Warfare 2 update with all the new weapons. But I also wonder if this could refer to the AI blocks as well. Potentially some sort of automated fighter that follows you around and stuff like that. The second thing they're overhauling with the economy system are the contracts that are available on the trade stations. I made a whole video about this years ago, that on paper the economy system sounds amazing, because one of the primary complaints about Space Engineers 1 is that the sandbox is great, but there's not really any reason to do anything. And one thing that players always ask for were like missions and contracts to complete, and they were in the game. You had to go to a trade station, find a contract terminal, and you could accept any number of contracts. But, as I also said in that video, the contracts never really felt worth it. The credit rewards you got never really felt worth it, the ships you could buy never really felt worth it, and the contracts themselves were very basic. Space Engineers 2 has a new contract system, and it's part of the core gameplay loop of that game, and whilst it's basic at the moment, that is because Space Engineers 2 does not have all the features in the game yet. So I have hope that as that system is so core to the game of Space Engineers 2, that will be expanded much further in the future, and perhaps this contract overhaul in Space Engineers 1 could give us an insight into how that might work. They released a video teasing these overhauled contracts, showcasing a recovery contract, a bounty contract in brackets PvE, which we'll discuss in a minute, a hauling contract, and a salvage contract. And on the Space Engineers newsletter, which is released every month, they went into further detail about each of these contracts. Recovery contracts sound quite interesting now, as it states that existing NPC and encounter systems now have a chance of becoming starting points for your next big payday. But that sounds like if you find an encounter out in space of a damaged ship, that potentially this automatically creates a contract in some way? Or perhaps that when you are there, you are able to create a contract for it, and then potentially take it to your nearest trade station to turn it in? The wording of this is a bit odd, but I would find it unlikely that you complete an encounter, fly away, and then get a contract later to go back there and pick up the stuff. As due to the way the encounter systems work in Space Engineers, a lot of these encounter grids disappear after a few hours in order to not drag down the performance of your game. So I can't imagine you go back to a space station and then there's a contract there for the encounter and then you just fly straight back to it. There must be some way of you potentially creating a contract, or a contract is created automatically while you're there. Bounty contracts are interesting, as previously these were only available in multiplayer. If a player in a multiplayer world has done a lot of piracy and upset a lot of the NPC factions, a contract would be issued in order to find and kill that player. So it appears in this next update, by the fact that these are bounty contracts PvE, that there'll be versions of these contracts that require you to hunt down NPCs instead. I think more combat is something that single player Space Engineers definitely needs, as whilst random encounters and cargo ships both have combat in them, they're, as the name would suggest, random and you have to go out and find them, whereas contracts that give you PvE stuff to do give you the location that you need to go to, so this is a much more structured way of engaging with combat in Space Engineers. Hauling contracts are pretty self-explanatory. I believe in the previous version they would give you an item to transport, but it appears from this teaser that it gives you a cargo container that you need to transport instead, which definitely focuses on the engineering aspect of Space Engineers, as you will need to build a ship capable of moving this cargo container around. And I assume if this cargo container gets damaged and stuff, you might potentially fail the contract or get less credits as a reward. We will have to wait and see. And salvage contracts appear to be different from recovery contracts, as they focus on finding items as opposed to, well, salvaging the ship. You can see in the teaser that we see 3 items on the desk. I don't recognize these. I don't believe these are any components in Space Engineers 1. There were items exclusive to contracts before this update. One of them was a package you had to deliver, for example. So I'm guessing these are either overhauled ones of those or just the original ones and I don't recognize them. I'm always happy when they add more stuff to do in Space Engineers 1, as the sandbox of Space Engineers 1 is almost perfect. We just need more reasons to engage with it, so I'm very excited for contracts. But whilst the gameplay side of contracts is very interesting, the main reward of it is that you get space credits. And as I said previously, I felt that what you could use space credits for was pretty underwhelming, but it appears that this is going to be addressed in the next update as well. This teaser shows off some of the new blocks that are coming in this update and DLC, and whilst we'll be going through those blocks in a minute, I actually want to draw your attention to this block back here. We had a separate teaser for this block previously, so we know that this block is called the Service Terminal, and the Service Terminal has some very interesting functions. The Service Terminal is another place that you can spend and earn space credits at, and one of the first things that we were told that it can do is that it can repair your ships.
What?
You can spend your space credits on repairing your ships. Look, NPCs are cool and all, but if this works the way we think it does, this is going to fix a massive core problem with Space Engineers. Combat in Space Engineers is very cool, it's very fun to engage with, but the problem with combat in Space Engineers is sometimes the actual cost of the combat does not outweigh what you get for winning the combat. Engaging in combat is sometimes a coin flip of potentially losing the hours of work you invested in the ship you were using. Time spent mining, refining, manufacturing components, welding up your ship could all disappear in an instant. And even if you win the combat, the damage to your ship could still take a very long time of mining, refining, manufacturing and welding to get it back up into fighting shape again, which is a big deterrent for a lot of people to engage with the combat in Space Engineers 1. But if you could pay for your ship to be repaired after combat, that would make engaging in combat scenarios much more palatable to the average player. Now, it could be possible that when it says that you need repairs, that it just repairs blocks that are currently damaged on your ship, but surely it can't just be that, right? Like, your blocks get damaged and lose components and health and stuff. But what if a block is completely destroyed? What if a section of your ship is cut off? Surely if this station offers repairs, it can repair that, right? Presuming that you project it or something like that. I feel like I really want more clarification on how this works, because if you're able to pay in order to weld up projections or even unfinished blocks, this feature is going to be huge. And if not modders, I really need you to do that. Please, 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 please. The Service Terminal also has 2 more features. You have the ability to sell ships at it, presumably if you have a ship that you don't want anymore, and you'd rather have space credits for it rather than components. It'd be interesting if you sold a ship to a station, and then it remembered it, and then someone else could buy it. That would be very interesting. There's almost a whole enterprise there of buying and selling ships. And the third feature is also a very interesting feature, and this is grid storage. You could use the Service Terminal to store a ship that you have inside of it. And then at any point, you can use the Service Terminal to then get the ship back out again. Kind of like a Pokemon PC box, but for your Space Engineers ships. Now, obviously, the biggest upside about this is PCU usage and lag. If you can store ships that you're not using inside of the Service Terminal, that means they're not taking up both PCU and your performance, which I know is something that players have been asking for years, and also a lot of servers already offer a similar function. But now this is coming as just a base game feature, and that is pretty cool. The Service Terminal might be one of the most interesting blocks coming in this update, but it is not the only new block coming in this update. On the right hand side where we can see the service terminal, we can see this block here, and I'm not too sure what this is supposed to be, but my initial thought, as it appears we're on a trade station, I would assume that this is potentially some sort of advertising banner, and perhaps on the front and the back of this there is an LCD that you can replace. So as on a trade station, this is probably advertising that Klein Cola is 50% off or whatever. And if you had this in your base, I'm sure there are all kinds of things you could use this for. And one more thing to mention in this clip before we move on, this back here, pretty sure, is an NPC. And this teaser came out a couple of weeks before the last teaser that showed us NPCs. So they were right under our nose this entire time. The next shot shows us this station here, and as you can see, this is a radically different design to the current trade stations in Space Engineers 1. And I believe that there are some new blocks down here, but we'll come back to it as I think we get a better look at them later. You can see there is another station here, again looking radically different from the current trade stations we have in Space Engineers. And this is a third design here, and this looks more like a random encounter than a trade station, as it looks quite run down and abandoned. But as you can see down here, and if you let the teaser come forward a little bit, this appears to be a pirate trade station. So whether or not this pirate trade station will trade different things, it does have a service terminal over here, so it looks like it is a fully functional trade terminal. There are pirate trade stations in the game currently, so presumably this is just a visual upgrade of one of those. I've just always found the idea of pirate trade terminals a bit weird. I'd be curious if there's a bit more to them. We have a trade station on the moon here, and we can see the back of our service terminal down here. And I want to draw your attention to up here, as this appears to be the side of a new block, but at this angle we can't really tell what it is. Now I think this block is also down here at the bottom, and it was also on the previous trade station that we looked at, but we just don't get a good angle on it here. But as I said, we get a good look later, so just bear with for now. Here's where things start to get interesting, as this trade station has a lot of new blocks on it. To start with, on the left over here, you can see that there is a new design for a cargo container, presumably a cosmetic replacement for it. However, more interestingly, to the right of it, we can see these new beam style blocks here. And there are several different variants of them. There is this long variant, and behind it there is a shorter variant going diagonally, and then if we come to the right we can see more of them going diagonally here, and I believe there is another one at the bottom here, although it's quite difficult to tell at this angle. On the top of the trade station, you can see our service terminal over here, and this behind it appears to be another new block as well, but as with some of the blocks we mentioned earlier, we get a much better look at this block later, and speaking of those blocks we'll get a look at later, you can see another one of it over here. It appears to be some sort of, is this 3 blocks wide, 5 blocks wide? It's some sort of large flat floor block. The Fieldwork DLC added some cosmetic floor blocks to the game, and one of them was called the Floor 3x3 Slab, which as its name suggests fills up a 3x3 space. So I would suggest that this block here is in a similar vein, in that it fills up a 3x3 or a 5x5 space. You can see another example of it here on the next shot. It definitely appears to be 5x5 by this angle. And we get a better look at our new cosmetic cargo container block down here, and you can see it has this corrugated texture on the side, indicating that it's supposed to be some sort of like big real life cargo container that we have on cargo ships and stuff. Part of me wonders if this is longer than a normal cargo container to fulfill that real life cargo container look, or potentially it cuts off back here and you have to stack them in a row in order to get that effect. We can see more of our beam blocks as well. Actually, these can't be called beam blocks because these up here are beam blocks. Or what would you call these otherwise? The teaser is called structural blocks, so potentially these are some sort of structural struts, I guess? I'm not super sure, but they do look very cool. And it does save you a lot of block space, as previously this would have been like 10, 12 blocks, and it would have looked nowhere near as good. We get to see inside one of these trade stations, and we get to see our NPCs walking around. And inside these trade stations, you can see that we've got these signs up here. This one says market, and that one at the back over there says cafeteria. So these appear to be cosmetic signs that I would imagine would be added in the DLC that will come alongside this update. It'd be cool if you could write text up here, but it appears from the designs of them that the text will be predetermined. So I imagine there'll just be a couple of different ones based on what they would normally have on a trade station. Here's a closer look at our beam strut blocks. You can see how detailed they are, and you can see 2 different variants of them. Actually, this one over here appears to be longer. No, I suggest there's definitely 3 different designs of them here. And again, we have our cargo container over here, and I can't quite work out if this is the end of the block or if it continues behind this, making it longer than the standard cargo containers we have in Space Engineers. In the final shot of this teaser, we appear to see a different variant of these 3x3 blocks, one with a connector in the middle. I know this is a design that lots of people were replicating when the Fieldwork update added the floor blocks, and people were adding these rings around their connectors. And this is that in one big block, which, as we discussed earlier, uses less PCU, and in this case it appears to make a much cleaner looking landing pad. And I can only assume that the rest of the landing pad is made up of the blocks I showed you the side of previously, being these large 3x3 or 5x5 foundation blocks for you to build your bases and ships out of. Finally, we have our NPC teaser, where we have our NPCs walking around, waving at the player and sitting in seats and stuff. But in this teaser, we also see a couple new blocks. Right at the beginning, we can see this block here, which appears to be some sort of circular LCD, which I'm imagining is a variant of our advertising panel that we saw earlier. And like the advertising panel block, I'm sure you can customize what is on the LCDs here to change them to display whatever you want. There's also this QR code on this one, which you are more than welcome to scan. And next to that, it says tap here for GPS. So I wonder if you interact with this block on a station, if this block then gives you the GPS coordinates of a different station. In this example, Sanderson Station. That would be very useful, as finding trading stations in Space Engineers 1 is a bit hit or miss. You start with a datapad with the locations of one when you start a new world, and then once you get to that one, you have to get lucky and hope that it sells datapads with locations to other space stations. Otherwise, you basically just have to fly around and hope that you come across one. So having trading stations advertise other trading stations inside them would be a very interesting way to help you find more of them. In the background, we can see the cafeteria sign again, and then behind it, we can see something very interesting. And in the next shot, we can get an even better look at this. It appears to be some sort of tree in a box. We can see that there's plant life at the bottom as well, so I would assume this is some sort of terrarium block. But we already have a terrarium block, so I'm a little bit unsure if that's what this is. The terrarium block we have currently is an insect terrarium block, so perhaps this is just a terrarium block by itself. Tree. I do very much like how this looks though, and I will definitely be placing some down in my bases. Also, this NPC just walks across and sits in a chair, absolutely ruining this shot. The next shot shows us walking into a room, and then the NPC in front of us waves. On the right, we can see our round advertising block again, and this is a different station on it. This one being New Coolgardie, so it'll be interesting to see if these are dynamic in the way that they work. And on the left, we can see another one of our cosmetic signs, and this one says security, which in the next shot we get a much clearer view of. And as the player turns their head, we can see another sign that says lobby, so it appears there's at least 4 of these cosmetic signs. In this shot towards the end of the teaser, we get to see some new window blocks back here that have a slight slit through them that you can see through, with the rest of it appearing to be armored, so potentially these are some sort of cosmetic armored window variant. And I think that wraps it up for the new blocks that we see in this teaser, with the end of this teaser focusing on the fact that this teaser is in single player and there's lots of characters walking around, which gives us our biggest indication that these are NPCs, but we've already discussed that. It was recently revealed that this Economy 2 update will be released in May, so I'll imagine we'll hear much more news about it shortly. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with what is coming in this update, and everything else to do with Space Engineers 1 and 2, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to do so. And if you want to go the extra mile and support this channel, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon with the links in the description below.